First thing I want to do is open a new file, and I'm going to call this one underscore last name underscore Photoshop Selection Tools. Now, obviously we know that US paper size is 8.5 by 11 inches. That makes it taller rather than wider. I want to flip it the other way around. I want it to be wider rather than taller. So I'm going to change that to 11 by 8.5. The rest of it I'll keep the same and click OK. I am going to make my workspace a little bit bigger. Whoops, there we go. And I'm going to zoom in so that I can see the majority of my area. Now, over here on the left-hand side of the toolbar is the toolbar. Up at the top, you'll see it's divided by lines. These are my selection tools, and that's what we're going to work with first. So I want you to notice that when you hover over a tool, you get a tooltip. It's telling you what the tool is. So we know that this is the Move tool. If you hover over it, you'll also see beside the tooltip, you'll see a letter. That letter tells you what the keyboard shortcut is to get to that tool. So I know if I hit V on my keyboard, I can get to the Move tool. Next, you'll see that you have little triangles at the lower right corner of each of these tools. That means that there's other tools that are docked with them. So here on the next set, we have our marquee tools. We have rectangular, elliptical, single row, and single column. We have lasso, polygonal lasso, and magnetic lasso. We have quick selection and magic wand. We have crop and slice tools. And we have the eyedropper and then some other ones which we won't use just now. Okay? So I'm going to start by using my lasso tool so that you guys can see how this works. Now, every time you choose a tool, you get some options up here at the top. With these selection tools, you have the ability to create a new selection, add to a selection, subtract from a selection, and intersect with a selection. You also have the ability to feather the edge, and what that does is it softens it so it's not really a hard edge. So I'm using my polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to have a new selection, and I'm going to go ahead and set my feather at 5 pixels. And I'm going to, down here about 1/3 of the way up, I'm going to create a squiggly line, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm just going to go outside the page, which is going to make it draw all the way at the edge until I get to the beginning. And notice when I get to the beginning, it creates what we call marching ants. And that shows that we have something selected. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here at the very bottom. You see I've got 2 color boxes. The one in the front is your foreground color. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And I want to choose a grassy color. So I'm going to use my spectrum to come down into the greens. And then I can move this little dot in here to get different shades and tints and values of green. So I'll choose a green that I like for grass. And down here, about halfway down, docked with the gradient tool, you'll see your paint bucket. I'm simply going to paint inside there like it's grass. Okay? Now, if I want the rest of this to be the color of the sky, instead of trying to make that selection again, what I can do is, because I have a selection, my select menu is going to have some tools for me. One of them is select inverse. So now all the white area is selected. And if I go back to my color picker and move the spectrum to the blues, I can choose a nice light blue color to paint the sky. Now, in order to get rid of the marching ants, you have to deselect. You maybe saw that here in the Select menu. And if you did, you'll also see that there is a keyboard shortcut for it, Command D. And that's one of those keyboard shortcuts that is very valuable. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit to show you. You may or may not see that there is kind of a white line between the grass and the sky. That's because I feathered the edge. Okay? And the feathered edge just made it a softer edge between the two instead of making it a hard edge. Now, I'm going to come over here to my Layers panel. If your Layers panel is not already selected or open, you may have to go to the Window menu and find Layers. Okay? We did this on the background layer. I want to create a new layer. And it's always a good habit to name your layers as you go so that you don't forget what they are. I'm going to name this one House. Now, I'm going to use my marquee, my rectangular marquee for this one. And I'm going to go back to 22 so it's not too big. Now, I want a new selection here, and I'm going to set my feather at 0 for this one. Okay. Now, I have a couple of options here. Notice style. You can either do normal, where you are in charge of freehanding the size and shape. You can also do fixed ratio and fixed size. I'm going to leave this at normal right now, though. I am going to draw on this new layer that I created, kind of a rectangle, and I'm just going to let go of it. Okay. Now, I'm going to add to the selection by doing this. Notice that with my mouse down here, it has a little plus sign next to the big one. That's showing that it's adding to. So if I intersect like that, that's going to make it a different shape when I let go of the mouse. Okay, so that's going to be the shape of my house, and I think I'll give it a little chimney. So I'm going to add to it, just like that. All right, now I'm going to subtract from this selection because I want to make a couple of windows in here, and you'll be able to see the sky through. We'll just pretend that the windows go from front to the back of the house. So I'm going to do 1 and 2. Okay. And I think that'll be good. Okay. All right. Now, when I go to my colors, I'm going to go ahead and try to find a color that somewhat resembles a brick color, and that may be a little bit difficult to do. There we go. That might be better. All right, there's kind of a brown color. And I click OK, and then I can use my paint bucket to fill it. And now I have a house, and if I deselect, Command D, notice because that house is on a different layer, I can move this house anywhere on my document that I want. Okay? All right, now I am going to create another layer, and this layer is going to be called Tree. Okay, I'm going to start with a rectangular marquee. It's going to be a very straight tree, and I'm going to draw a tree trunk, and whoops, even though I had it on subtract, because there was nothing to subtract from, it made a selection, just FYI. Okay, I'm going to add to that selection by making a couple of branches stick out. Okay, and I'll go ahead and make that a little darker brown and fill that for my tree trunk. Okay, I'll deselect, And I will now do an elliptical, and I will draw an area here for it to have all the leaves. Okay, so it's going to be a round one. And then I'm going to go to my color picker and choose a really dark shade of green to fill in. Okay, and deselect. Now, I do want you to notice that because that tree trunk was already there, that this green is, it ignored that when I filled it in. And because this is on one layer, it moves together. Okay? All right. Now, let's say that we don't want our house to look like it is a see-through front to back window. We want it to have a different color. We can use our magic wand tool. Now, our magic wand tool has all these things. The thing that's different is it has what's called a tolerance. Now, because these are all solid colors, the tolerance is kind of irrelevant, but basically the lower this number, the less it will pick. The higher the number, the more of the color it will pick. So we're just going to leave this at 25 right now. And look, if I click inside here, and then if I add to the selection and click inside here, it's selecting just that area of the window. And so now, let's say I want to have, let's say I have purple drapes. And then I can use my paint bucket to fill those. And then I can deselect. Now, I'm going to go and I'm going to create another new layer. And this layer is going to be sun. Now, obviously, a sun can be a little bit circular. Okay, so I'm just going to draw it right here. But we also know that a sun can have some little spikies to it. So I'm going to use my polygonal lasso tool, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, click, and notice how I'm just making little zigzags around, and it's going to add the spikies to my selection. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You can have some that are smaller than others, some that are bigger. Okay, and almost done. You got to get back to the original point in order for it to take. So now I have a sun shape, and I'm going to use my paint bucket, and I'm going to get a yellow, a nice bright yellow color to fill my sun. And again, I can get my move tool, and I can get my sun wherever I want. Now, notice how my sun looks like it's in front of the tree. That's because of the order of these layers. I could drag my sun behind the tree, okay, and that means that it's kind of in front of it there. The tree is in front. You can see that. Okay. Last, create another layer, and you can do, using the lasso tool, you can do a couple of bird shapes. And again, this lasso tool is a little bit difficult, so be patient. And you can do maybe a dark blue for a bird. And then remember that all of these layers are movable because they are on different layers. So they can be in front of or in back of whatever you choose.